Hello everybody, welcome back to my sunroom here in East Tennessee on this gorgeous, cool October day. It's the middle of October, as you can tell from the trees in the background. They're so pretty this time of the year. We live in a beautiful, beautiful area. And I wanted to talk to you all about fertilizer today because, you're going through the summer, you're using all this fertilizer, and then all of a sudden the cooler temperatures hit and you're wondering, okay, now what do I do? And that's a really good question to ask. So if you will notice on the back of your MSU, I use the Tolumnia brand, which is MSU fertilizer. And this is a 13-3-15 for tap, rain, and RO for reverse osmosis water. And so it tells you on the label to use a full teaspoon during the spring and summer and 3/4 of a teaspoon in the fall and the winter. Okay, that's a very general guideline. And I just wanted to tell you, if you live in a very, very warm area, then that is probably going to work for you. But here in East Tennessee, it works for me until I hit fall. And do I use a full 3/4 teaspoons during the fall and the winter? No, I don't. Don't forget that your temperatures and the way that your fertilizer is absorbed, it goes hand in hand. If you don't have high temperatures, then your fertilizer is not going to be absorbed very well or not as much. What excess fertilizer does in your pots is it will just kind of build up, and then you're going to kind of have fertilizer build up in your bark or in your moss, and that's not good. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to kind of pinpoint, okay, the temperatures aren't so high today, so how much is my orchid actually going to be absorbing? So I'm going to give you an example. Today it's about 60 degrees outside, and in my sunroom right now, it's about 71 degrees Fahrenheit. It's probably going to get up to about 75 or 76 because the sun is going to hit the sunroom in about an hour or so. So that's probably going to be my high for today. I'm not getting as much light as I was during the summer. We're down to about 11 hours or so of sunlight per day now. And so the sun's not going to be out for that long, so it's not going to heat up for very long back here in my sunroom. So what I'm doing with my complex hybrid phals, as you see, you're seeing a lot of spikes here. They're still getting the 3/4 teaspoon dose. They can handle a lot of fertilizer. Look at all the leaves, look at the spikes. These are mature plants. I've had most of these in my collection for at least 10 years. So they need the extra. So I'm going to give them a full 3/4 of a teaspoon of the MSU. And with my summer blooming phals, like my Phalaenopsis, here's my Matuo King Balena, beautiful. And here's my Phalaenopsis. Okay, what do I do with these? Back in the summer, I was using about a half a dose. So I'm going to use half of the 3/4 teaspoon dose. Okay, so in other words, for those of you who use a TDS meter, which I highly recommend you do, I was giving these about 400 parts per million. That's about a half of a dose of your MSU. And now I'm giving them about 300, 325. Now next week, our temperatures are going to be down into the 50s, and I'm going to have to see what the temperatures back here are going to be because we're supposed to get rain and cool temperatures, which means it's probably not going to, I don't know, I don't think it's going to get up to 75 to 76. So I might even go down to 200 parts per million, depending on my temperatures. I really look at the temperatures and see what they're doing as far as how much I'm fertilizing. Because they're starting to kind of not geared down, but most of the leaves have pretty much finished growing. Yeah, for the summer. And so they don't need quite as much. Plus, I am growing most of my novelty and species phals in sphagnum moss, and the sphagnum moss really does retain nutrients. So check your temperatures, check the temperature of your grow space, and if you've got good temperatures, then you can bump it up a little bit. If your temperatures are going down, you're going to bump it down a little bit. And with my Cattleyas, usually in the summertime, I give them about a half a dose or even 2/3 of a dose, which means half a teaspoon to 2/3 of a teaspoon. If there's a lot of new growth on my Cattleyas, that's what my summer dose is going to be. I'm going to pare that back by about 1/4. So in other words, right now they're getting around 300 to 350 parts per million, or that's about 1/3 of a teaspoon per gallon. So you can see how it changes this time of the year. Winter, that's a different story altogether too. You have to really think about how much you're going to fertilize them. I do get sunlight a lot back here in the winter time, so that helps me out a lot. Plus, I'm using grow lights. Grow lights are going to cause them to continue to keep growing, during the winter. And so you have to kind of remember, that's the reason why I don't back off from fertilizer altogether too much during the winter, because of the grow lights. Because if you're going to use the grow lights and tell them, okay, continue to grow on, then you still need to use some fertilizer. And I had a really good question on my channel the other day from my summertime fertilizing video. And I'm going to place a link to that video below in the description box. It might have some information for you all who grow in warmer temperatures that you could find useful even now, or if you want a little bit more information about the MSU fertilizer that I'm using, you might want to go back to that video. The question was, what happens when I don't use fertilizer? Because I'm not, and every time my Bellina grows a new leaf, another leaf turns yellow. What's going on? And my answer was, if you're not feeding your plant enough, you're going to get more yellow leaves. Now, is a yellow leaf normal here and there? Yes, it is. This little Bellina right here is less than a year old, and I didn't want to just shower her with too much fertilizer because, she's got what? Yeah, she's got 4 leaves. So this leaf is getting bigger. So in the spring, I'm going to be able to fertilize her at a greater rate. But do you see the yellow leaf? That is perfectly okay every once in a while. But if you're getting a lot of yellow leaves, brown leaves in a year, then your plant is showing you need to bump up your fertilizer. If you're getting yellow leaf tips on an established plant, they'll just start turning yellow from the tips of the leaves. Then you need to bump up the fertilizer on that plant. But during the fall and the winter, unless you have a really warm day, might not be the best time to bump up your fertilizer. If you're not fertilizing, then it shows you need to fertilize that plant. But it also shows, like in the springtime when they start really actively growing, because plants are smart. They know when spring has come. Every spring, I'm just amazed. It's like something just tells them, okay, start growing now. When your leaf tips are yellow, it means you're not fertilizing quite enough. Bump it up just a little bit, not a huge amount, because orchids, they go on smaller amounts than most houseplants do. So bump it up just a little bit and see if those tips don't start greening up again. That's what I do, and it works. And with my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis, what I do is I watch what it's doing. Okay, this one has had 5 spikes on it in the past 4 months. Still has 4 spikes. And I've noticed that if I don't fertilize it, the old growths kind of start turning yellow. And I really don't want that. So what I've been doing is I've been using about a half a teaspoon at this point. If you have one that it still has a cane that's growing, like over here with Wilson, he still isn't done with that huge, 4-foot cane. Okay, I'm going to use more fertilizer on him because he's still growing. This cane is still growing. So that's why I tell you, you have to see what's going on with your plants. If you've got this big, huge Phalaenopsis or this big, huge Dendrobium, they're just going to take more, even into the fall. So you have to kind of gauge with your individual environment, what kind of plants you have, and what stage of growth are they in. And with my Tolumnias, as you see, I've got some spikes here. I've got about 7 of them right now in spike. And so what I'm doing is I give them about 1/4 of a dose this time of the year. That's pretty much the dose that I give them all through the year. I don't decrease it because in the fall and the winter, that's when they're spiking. So it's kind of like I've got some in spike, I've got some growing all the time. They're in constant growth, almost like my phals. So yeah, I give them anywhere between 200 to 250 parts per million. That's about 1/4 of a dose. And I don't see any deficiencies in them whatsoever. They're doing well. They bloom really well. As a matter of fact, some of mine bloomed a little bit too well back in the summer. And I'm having issues with keeping them hydrated. I'm keeping them fertilized. Yeah, they can bloom for a very long period of time. So they grow and they bloom quite a lot for them to be such small plants. But as you see, they don't stay very small for very long. So yeah, about 1/4 of a dose, but I do that throughout the whole year. But these also grow at the equator. So I'm thinking they get 12 hours of light practically the whole year long. I don't know. That's what's working for me. What are you all doing with your Tolumnias? I'm just curious. Are they doing well, and do you fertilize them the same? Because I've only grown these for about 3 years. I still feel like I'm kind of new with them. So I'm just curious as to your all's experience with them. But this is what is working with me. I give them 1/4 of a dose every other time I water them. That seems to be working. So that's how I fertilize my orchids during the fall months. Winter months is a little bit different, and I'll get in a fertilizing for winter video. Just remember, when it gets cold in your area, to really stop and think about how much that you're fertilizing. If you have orchids that go through dormancy, I don't think I do. I have a few, but they're not in dormancy right now. But don't forget that when they are in dormancy, you don't fertilize those at all. And if you're a beginner, remember that a smaller dose is better than a huge dose. When I was a beginner, I was used to watering and fertilizing outdoor plants where you used a lot of fertilizer. Orchids are not that way. That's just not what they like. So if you're a beginner, a smaller fertilizer dose, especially in the fall and winter, is going to serve you well. For those of us who have been growing for a long time, and I know so many of you who watch my channel, you have been watching me for many years, and you're very, very proficient at growing. You're very successful growers. I guess the one thing that I remind myself this time of the year is temperatures. Water my temperatures. Don't forget to check what it's doing outside and how much day length that I have. So hope you all are just having a beautiful fall season. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you again, everyone, for hyping my videos. I really appreciate that. That just blesses me, and you all are a blessing to me as well. You all are my orchid family, and I appreciate you so much. And before I end the video, I would love to say the blessing over you, your families, and your plants. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. You all make it a great day. We'll talk to you next time.